This isn't just a story about a courtroom clash. It's a lesson in how knowledge and quiet strength can defeat even the most powerful figures. When a respected judge decided to target a seemingly simple teacher, he never expected to meet someone with a mind sharper than the law he thought he owned. Asterisk when Judge Franklin Pierce summoned Emma Lawson to his courtroom. He believed he had found the ideal person to make an example of. To him, she was just a high school literature teacher who had the nerve to criticize him publicly. He aimed to embarrass her, damage her reputation, and soothe his bruised ego. But as Emma stood silently in her burgundy sweater, gripping her notes, the judge had no idea he was about to be the architect of his own downfall. Emma Lawson brushed a strand of blonde hair behind her ear and wrote the words "symbolism in modern literature" on the whiteboard. Her classroom of high school seniors sat in varied states of attention, some engaged, others counting down to lunch. She had been teaching at Westridge High for a decade and loved her job. Despite occasional classroom challenges, Miss Lawson called Jeremy from the back row. "Why do we have to dig into symbolism? Can't we just enjoy the story?" Emma smiled warmly as she set down the marker. "That's a really thoughtful question, Jeremy. Literature isn't just for entertainment, it's a mirror reflecting justice, truth, and human behavior. The deeper you look, the more insight you gain, not only into the story, but into the world around you." As the bell rang and students began gathering their things, Emma noticed the school paper left behind on a desk. The headline read, "Local Judge's Controversial Decision Impacts School Funding." Her smile faded as she recalled the town hall last month where she'd spoken out against Judge Franklin Pierce's decision to divert funds earmarked for education into a private development project. That afternoon, in the teacher's lounge, her colleague Diane gave her a playful nudge. "Heard you stirred the pot at that community meeting." Emma shook her head. "I simply spoke the truth. What Pierce did may have been legal, but it wasn't right. That money was meant for our schools." "Well," Diane warned, "you upset someone important. Pierce isn't the type to let things go. He's got allies everywhere." "I'm just a teacher sharing my view," Emma replied calmly. "What's he going to do? Sue me?" What most at Westridge didn't know was that Emma had once graduated at the top of her law school class. She had chosen not to practice, disenchanted during her internships with the world of legal battles. Instead, she pursued teaching, infusing her passion for justice into literature and critical thinking. Driving home that evening, Emma thought of her late grandfather, a small-town attorney who fought for the underrepresented. His well-worn law books now lined her shelves, a quiet reminder of the path not taken. Back in her modest apartment, she kicked off her shoes and prepared for an evening of grading. Her answering machine blinked. A message played. "Miss Lawson, this is the municipal court clerk. You're being summoned for a traffic violation from last month. Judge Pierce will be presiding. Please appear Friday at 9 a.m. Emma's brow furrowed. She had received a minor citation weeks ago for a rolling stop, but she had already paid the fine online. There should be no need to appear in court. A feeling of unease settled in as she remembered the piercing glare Pierce had given her at the town hall. Something was off. In his chambers, Judge Pierce reviewed Emma's file with a smug smile. "Gerald," he called to his clerk, "get me everything on this woman, Emma Lawson." The clerk returned later with a thin file. "She teaches at Westridge, lives alone, clean record, but she did graduate from law school. Top of her class. Didn't take the bar though." Pierce raised an eyebrow. "A law school graduate, perfect. Knows just enough to be dangerous but not enough to fight back." He stared out his window, plotting. "Gerald, change the summons. Say she failed to appear for a required hearing. Add a contempt charge." Gerald hesitated. "But that would be fabricating. The system gives judges discretion for a reason." Pierce cut him off. "This will teach her to mind her place." Later that week, during a school meeting, Principal Stevens asked Emma to stay behind. "I got a troubling call from the superintendent," he said, removing his glasses. "Apparently, you're involved in some legal trouble." Emma blinked. "Legal trouble? You mean my traffic ticket? I paid that online." Stevens slid a paper across the desk. "There's talk of failure to appear and contempt." Judge Pierce raised concerns about teachers who disrespect the judiciary. "If this escalates, it might affect your contract." Emma's heart sank. This wasn't about traffic, it was retaliation. She received an official court notice in the mail that evening. Unlike the standard automated ticket, this one accused her of failing to appear and cited her for contempt. Emma called the court clerk, but they claimed she'd missed a mandatory hearing. Her payment, they said, had been flagged for irregularities. Emma felt her pulse rise. She retrieved her grandfather's old law notes, dug out her laptop, and began researching Judge Pierce's history. The same names, developers, political allies, popped up in multiple rulings. No complaints against him had ever gone anywhere. She called Diane. "Stevens is asking if I talk politics in class," Diane warned. Emma's expression hardened. "This isn't about a ticket. This is a smear campaign." That night, Emma transformed her apartment into a war room. She cross-referenced public records, highlighted case irregularities, and noted patterns. This judge had a history of punishing his critics, quietly and subtly, not big enough to trigger scrutiny, but enough to instill fear. She remembered her grandfather's advice: you don't fight power with more power, you fight it with truth and preparation. Emma made 3 key calls, one to a classmate at the state bar, one to a former student turned journalist, and one to the court, stating she'd represent herself. She taught her class with grace. The next day, aware that Stevens was observing, when he urged her to just apologize, Emma stood her ground. Students learn best by watching us model integrity. She spent the next 48 hours preparing like a seasoned attorney. At the law library, she researched precedents and court procedures. At the records office, she requested transcripts of Pierce's past contempt rulings. Mark Chen, her former student, called I ran numbers. Pierce's contempt charges have quadrupled. Most involve people who challenged him. It's a pattern. Emma built her case with care, not to accuse directly, but to expose procedural flaws. She selected a simple, respectful outfit for court and rehearsed until she knew every word by heart. The day of the hearing, the courthouse buzzed with activity. Emma watched Pierce in action, curt with defendants, dismissive of explanations. Finally, her name was called. Pierce barely looked at her. Miss Lawson, failure to appear. Contempt. How do you plead? Not guilty, Your Honor, Emma said calmly. I never received notice to appear, and I paid my citation. She presented her receipt. Pierce brushed it off. The citation required a court date. With respect, Your Honor, Emma said. It didn't, and the online portal confirmed payment resolved the matter. Pierce bristled. You clearly have a problem with authority. Like at the town hall, there it was. Emma had her opening. She replied. I wasn't aware my lawful opinion was relevant to a traffic ticket. The judge fined her $2,000 and ordered community service. But Emma stood tall. Your Honor, I move for your recusal under Judicial Conduct Rule 2.11. The courtroom went silent. Pierce was stunned. On what grounds? Emma listed 3. His public bias, procedural irregularities in her case, and a troubling pattern of similar incidents. She submitted evidence, court records, and even named other individuals who had suffered similar treatment. The judge's face turned pale. Where did you get this legal knowledge? Emma smiled. I graduated top of my class in law school. I chose teaching, but I never stopped learning. Behind closed doors, Pierce asked, What do you want? Justice, Emma replied. Dismiss all charges. Mark them with prejudice. Recuse yourself from any future case involving me or my school, and review the 7 other cases. Returning to court, Judge Pierce announced the charges dismissed and recused himself. Outside, a reporter asked for comment. Emma replied, The law protects us all, even from those who misuse it, but only if we know our rights. 2 weeks later, the superintendent told Emma that Pierce had taken a leave of absence, and the diverted school funds had been reinstated. That night, Emma found a note tucked inside her grandfather's law book. Thank you for showing us that standing up matters. She smiled, knowing she had taught her greatest lesson yet, not from the whiteboard, but from the courtroom. This story teaches us that true power doesn't come from titles or robes. It comes from courage, preparation, and standing firm when you know you're right. Emma reminded us that you don't have to shout to be heard, and you don't need a courtroom to make a difference. What would you have done if you were in Emma's place? Let us know in the comments, and if this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that one voice, prepared and principled, can change everything.